Natural vegetation in India. Now, this is a topic where we focus mainly on five types of vegetation that we find in India. But before we begin with what is natural vegetation, the basic question. So, when vegetation is left undisturbed over a period of time on a given parcel of land, we say it is called as a natural vegetation. Now, this undisturbed climate allows what? Allows the individual species to propagate and grow. So, we have individual species which can grow based on the soil condition, based on the climate condition, and they can develop into new varieties as and when required. So in this lecture, we would focus on these five types of natural vegetation, followed by forestry, social forestry, types of social forestries, and then wildlife in India. To begin with, the tropical evergreen and the semi-evergreen forest. So in this map, as you can see, those marked with the darker shades are the regions where you have the tropical evergreen and semi-evergreen. However, in the regions in the west, in the central part, we have the thorn forest. The remaining is the deciduous forest. In the north, there is the montane type of soil, or the mountainous soil as we call it. And then we have littoral and swamp areas where we have the deltas. So the Ganga Brahmaputra delta, the Krishna Godavari delta, here we find the littoral and the swamp zones. Now coming on to the first, which is tropical evergreen and semi-evergreen. Tropical evergreen, as we can see, western slopes of Western Ghats, eastern slopes of Eastern Ghats, regions of Andaman Nicobar, and then the region of Northeast, where we have a rainfall of more than 200 centimeters and a mean annual temperature of 22 degrees Celsius. So the basic requirements for tropical evergreen. Now, the tropical evergreen forests are well stratified. Stratified means they are in layers. So there are near ground creepers which remain on the ground. Above that, there are short trees, and above the short trees we find tall trees which can be as high as 60 meters. So very high trees are also found in this region. Now, they are called evergreen. Why? Each of the species shed their leaf during different season. As a result, you see green throughout the year, and therefore we call these species as evergreen species. That means each species has a capability to shed their leaves during different time, and therefore they remain green throughout. What are the common species found here? Rosewood, mahogany, then we have any, ebony are some of the common species which are found as a part of tropical evergreen. Semi-evergreen, what are they? Less evergreen as compared to the tropical evergreen. So they are mix of evergreen plus wet deciduous, not the dry deciduous but wet deciduous. So evergreen plus wet deciduous, a mix of those, we call those as semi-evergreen. Now, semi-evergreen are another important species. What are common species under semi-evergreen? Under semi-evergreen, we have white cedar. Then there is hollock, kale as some of the other species which are found in semi-evergreen. Now, in the Garhwal and Kumaon areas, we have what we call as the oak forest, and these oak forests were replaced by pine forest. Now, why they were replaced by pine forest? Pine was required for timber purpose, and when it was required for timber purpose, numerous crops, numerous plantations were cleared. So we saw when Britishers invaded India, or when Britishers arrived in India, they were looking to develop railway lines, so they required huge amount of timber. At the same time, they were involved with construction activities for hill stations, so insulation again required lot of timber. So this timber used to come from the clearing of the forest, and during that time a lot of forest areas were cleared. So oak trees in the Garhwal Kumaon were replaced by pine, which were needed by the railway lines. Similarly, we have plantation crops which were introduced, which were high paying crops in the European nations during that time. Tea, rubber, coffee were some good examples, and most of the forests were shifted for commercial activities during that time. So under the deciduous forest, we can classify those as wet deciduous and dry deciduous. As we said, semi-evergreen is mix of what? It is mix of evergreen and wet deciduous. Now under wet deciduous, teak, sal, shisham, mahua, amla, kusum, sandalwood are some of the commonest species. These deciduous, as we can see in the map, they are most widespread. They are found in a region where the rainfall is somewhere from 70 to 200 centimeters, and these are also known as monsoon forests. Grow exceptionally good during the monsoon times. Moist deciduous are seen in the rainfall of 100 to 200 centimeters. Dry deciduous in 70 to 100 centimeters. Dry deciduous usually are seen in the transition areas to the wet deciduous. So here you have the wet deciduous. In the transition of the wet deciduous, there would be dry deciduous which would be seen, and dryers have thinner margins, so they are relatively in the narrow belts, narrow areas. Peninsula, plain, UP Bihar area are some of the areas where dry deciduous are seen. Some of the common vegetations in dry deciduous are tendu leaves, amalthas, ber, kale, axlewood, palash are the common species which are seen. In the parts of West and South Rajasthan, we have vegetation which is covered in a very scanty form, and that is because of low rainfall. And then another important issue is overgrazing in these areas. So these are the two things which are responsible for lesser vegetation, scanty vegetation in the West and South Rajasthan, which is low rainfall, and secondly overgrazing significantly high in these areas. The next is tropical forest area in the parts of western Rajasthan. So parts of West Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, western Gujarat area, little of Kutch, little of Madhya Pradesh, southern Madhya Pradesh areas. So these forests remain leafless, since they are the only vegetation is cactus trees and babool, ber, wild date palm, kher, neem, khejdi, palash are some of the common trees which are grown here. You also see one of the important grass which is known as Tasoki grass, and this grass can go up to a height of 2 meters, found in the thorny areas. So that is again one of the common phenomena which are seen in the thorn forest. The next is montane forest. Montane forests are classified under 3 levels. So one is the height between 1500 to 1750 meters, and here we have pine forest, cheer, devdar, chinar, walnut are common examples. Then we have above this height there is blue pine and spur, and above that there are silver spur, junipers, pine, birch and rhododendrons. Rhododendrons have beautiful colors in them. Now again, montane forest can be classified as north montane and south montane. In the north it is mainly the Himalayan belt. In the south we have 3 areas: Western Ghat, Vindhyas and Nilgiris. So 3 distinct areas where the southern mountain vegetation is seen, and these which are seen as a part of southern mountain are closer to the tropics, have only 1500 meters above sea level. The vegetation is temperate, is temperate in the higher areas and subtropical on the lower regions. Then we have the regions of Western Ghat, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, where these forests are commonly seen. Also we have the Shola forests, which are called as in the regions of Nilgiri, Annamalai and the Palari hills, where the montane vegetation is found. Coming to the north, it is mainly the Himalayan belt, where you have the whole succession based on the altitude. As we have mentioned, the various species find at different altitude. Wet temperate forests are usually seen at a height of 1000 meters to 2000 meters, and then again in the northeast India we have lots and lots of vegetation which is mainly oak, chestnut as the common vegetations, and also these mountain forests are known for transhumance activity. Transhumance activity basically includes the movement of Gujar, Bakarwal, Bhutiyas and Gaddis. So those are the common tribes which are seen in the mountain region. Then we have the littoral and the swamp region. Now India's wetlands have been classified into 8 different sections. One are the lakes and the rivers of Kashmir and Ladakh. Then we have the mangrove forest and the wetland areas of Andaman Nicobar, the floodplains of Brahmaputra and the marshes in the northeast. Then we have the marshes of Ganga, wetlands of east coast, mainly the Chilka region. Then fresh lakes, for example, in Gujarat, in Rajasthan, Kevla Dev, and then in Madhya Pradesh. Saline lakes in Rajasthan and Gujarat, the Kutch area, and then reservoirs in the Deccan area. So these are the 8 wetland classification. 70% of the littoral and the swamp comprises of paddy cultivation. Total wetland area in India is somewhere around 3.9 million hectares or 4 million hectares. And then we have species of migratory birds seen in Kevla Dev National Park, where waterfowls are the common conservation species which are seen, and Ramsar Convention is the common convention that we hear for wetland conservation. Now under any international convention, what happens, it is an agreement which is under the United Nations, and the idea is to make sure that those regions are preserved well across the globe. Now marshes are mainly seen with swamps, and here we have mangroves as the common vegetation. Mangroves have a unique characteristics as they are pneumatophores. That means they to force where they have a capability of making the roots move up. So you have the tree, and then on the ground the roots are aerial, so they move out of the soil in order to take the to exchange of air. Okay, so mangrove roots are aerial roots, and they are one of the classic characteristics of a swampy forest, mainly seen in the regions of Sundarbans. Coming on to the forest cover in India. In India, forest cover is classified under 2 heads. One is the actual forest cover. This is identified through aerial photographs, satellite imageries. The other is the area which is notified and recorded by the forest land, and this is based on the records of the State Revenue Department, individual state records. In India, we basically classify the forest areas based on the concentration. So where there are more than 40% forest, 20 to 40% forest, 10 to 20% forest, less than 10% forest, and so on. So that is the classification. The forest area as the norm should be at least 33%, or 1/3 of the land should be under forest. We in India have seen that there are states like Lakshadweep where we have 0% forest area. On the other hand, another island group which is Andaman and Nicobar, so Lakshadweep in the Arabian Sea and Andaman Nicobar in the Bay of Bengal. So in the Bay of Bengal, we have Andaman Nicobar where you have nearly 86.9% forest cover which is witnessed. The regions of the north and the northwest have less than 10% of the forest area, where Punjab, Haryana, Gujarat, Delhi, some of the examples. Most of the land here has been cleared from the forest area for agricultural purposes or agricultural activities, and in the regions of Rajasthan, we already have a lot of desert area, so no chance for forest cultivation there. So forest cover definitely needs to be promoted and increased. Now we had the very first forest policy in 1952. It was later adopted in 1988 where amendments were brought out. What were the amendments? 33% of the area should be under forest. We should maintain the environmental stability and restore the forest for better ecological balance, conserve the natural heritage, check these forest areas, check the soil erosion. They increase the fertility of the soil. So afforestation, social forestry are some of the good activities. Productivity of the forest is increased to make timber, fuel, fodder more available to the population. And then for plantation, we can create mass drives, mass movements, and these mass movements and mass drive would actually reduce the pressure on the existing forest and bring in new areas under cultivation, into forest cover. So the degraded lands, the barren lands could be gradually translated into the forest area. Some of the new ways through which we are trying to improve the forest cover is seed bombing. Here what we do is seeds are dropped through the aerial ways and they are bombarded onto the soil, and they are in the row, the seeds are in the roll of soil, and when they fall they are actually deposited there, and new species, new trees can be grown. In India, of the 593 districts as per 2013, nearly 188 districts are the districts which are called as tribal districts. Now these tribal districts account for nearly 60%, approximately 60% of the forest cover in India. However, if we talk about in geographical terms, they contribute to only 33% of the area. Despite 33% of the area, they contribute to 60% of the forest. So these tribal districts in India again become very, very important from the conservation of forest perspective. The next is social forestry. What is social forestry? It is nothing but protection of the forest, bringing barren lands, as we already mentioned, under forest cover, and this would help in restoring the environmental, social and rural development of the region. So this social forestry can be demarcated into three heads: urban, rural and farm forestry. Urban is where what happens, you have trees which are planted in the public areas, roadside avenues, industrial complexes, commercial green belts. So green belts are developed, parks are developed, and those are areas which are known as urban forest. What is rural forest? Rural forest, we have agroforestry and community forestry. Agroforestry is where agriculture plus forest grow simultaneously, and therefore any kind of waste patches would be brought under cultivation, so either in the form of agriculture or in the form of forest land, and both of these activities remain there simultaneously. What is community forest? Community forest involves raising of the trees in a public area, in a community land. So this could be a village pasture land, it could be a temple land, any common area, a common resource, common property resource, what we call as the CPR. So under this common property resource, there is community forest, and then we have community forest program, which aims to benefit not only the community but the rural area as a whole. And significantly, there are numerous landless people who are associated to this community farming, where they also get a share of the produce. So the next is farm forestry. Farm forestry, where farmers grow tree for commercial and non-commercial purpose on their farmland. So on their own farmland they can grow trees, and this could be for commercial activities or for non-commercial activities. So forest department distributes the seeds and the seedlings to small and medium farmers free of cost, and once they get those seeds, they start to grow those plants and those species on their own fields, grasslands and pastures, and they can either move it under the commercial forestry or under the non-commercial, just to protect the other trees or the other species which they are growing in their neighborhood or the surrounding. The next is wildlife. Why wildlife is so important? Of the total species across the globe, nearly 4 to 5% species are present in India. Despite the fact that this proportion is significantly low, we need to have an ecosystem which can actually preserve the species which are present in India. But on the other hand, we have seen declining wildlife. Why they are declining? First is industrial development, technological development, higher poaching activities, mining activities, human settlement, more pressure on forest areas for fodder and fuel wood, which damages or devastates the forest, and as a result, the native species of that area. Overgrazing. Now, overgrazing affects the wildlife and the habitat. Hunting for sports purpose again affects the number of wildlife and disturbs the food chain or the food pyramid. Higher proportions of forest fires. Higher proportions of forest fire also disrupt the existing process of balance which is seen in this region. Now, for this, what we need to have is conservation. In our smaller days, we had heard about stories of Panchatantra, we had heard stories of Jungle Book, Mowgli. What were those? Those were inspirational stories to help explain wildlife and their importance and intimacy of human beings with wildlife or their ecosystem. So, in 1972, what happened was a Wildlife Act which was introduced. This Wildlife Act brought a legal conservation method for protecting the wildlife and the endangered species which are listed under various schedules. And this act was amended in 1991 to become much more stringent and much more comprehensive in order to protect and conserve the various species. What were the common projects? We have Project Hangul for conservation of Hangul, crocodile breeding program, conservation of Himalayan musk deer, similarly Rhino project, we have Project Elephant, Project Tiger as some of the common projects. So Project Elephant was launched in 1992 and this aimed at increasing the population of elephant and making viable environment for elephants to sustain. So this project initially was implemented in 17 states and later it was spread to other states as well. Project Tiger was another important project which was implemented back in 1973. The idea is tigers lie on the top of the food pyramid, and if that food pyramid is disturbed, that would disturb the whole of the ecosystem. If no tigers, the population of deer would increase significantly. If the population of deers increase significantly, the grass would be gone at a very fast pace, and therefore to maintain this ecological pyramid, to maintain this food chain, we require the conservation of tigers. Now, as we said, it has aesthetic value, it has cultural value, it has ecological significance. So, all this has to be introduced, and it was nearly around 16,000 square kilometers of area which was brought under tiger conservation or the Project Tiger. Initially, it was launched in 9 tiger reserves across the country, which slowly increased to 44 and then furthermore, increasing the area covered from 16,000 to nearly 36,000 square kilometers. And then we also have seen that with this Project Tiger, the population of the tiger was increasing significantly. So in 2006, the population somewhere was around 1400, which in 2010 increased to 1700. So within a period of 4 years, we have seen an increase of nearly 300 tigers, as in the numeric terms if we say. The next is Biosphere Reserve. What is Biosphere Reserve? Biosphere Reserve is a unique combination where we say terrestrial and coastal ecosystems are preserved and they are recognized under the UNESCO's Man and Biosphere program, which is also known as the MAB program, Man and Biosphere program. So out of the initial 18 biosphere reserves, as we can see here, which were released in 2013 and 14, 10 of those have been part of the World Network of Biosphere Reserves of UNESCO. Now, what the objective is for a biosphere reserve? Biosphere reserve aims to promote conservation, aims to promote protection of species and development and logistics. So conservation, development and logistics in broad sense is the basis there. Now what we need to understand is 4 major biosphere reserves that we would discuss. What are those 4? So as you can see, we have the various biosphere reserves, the 18 biosphere reserves that we have talked here. We would be focusing on the 4 major ones. To begin with is the Gulf of Mannar. As we can see, in terms of square kilometer of area, it is 10,500 square kilometers of area, and it is in the part of Gulf of Mannar, which is from Rameshwaram in the north to Kanyakumari in the south. So from Kerala to Karnataka, and it was established in 89. So this biosphere reserve comprises of nearly 21 islands which are located there, and these 21 islands are indeed part of the development there. So these 21 islands which are seen have been significantly important because these are where we have even sea cows, which is known as the Dungeon Dagon, is protected. So Dungeon Uttarakhand is protected, which is the sea cow. Okay, so that is Gulf of Mannar. The next is Sundarbans. Was established in 1989 again, both of them in 1989. It is at the confluence of Ganga Brahmaputra Delta in West Bengal, and here we have lots of mangrove species, the Royal Bengal tiger, which are seen in Sundarbans, and we have numerous species which are found in the mangrove ecosystem. So nearly 170 bird species which are known to be seen in the mangrove forest are found here. Tigers here are unique because they have a capability to remain in the estuarine waters, so they have a experience of sea water as well as fresh water, and they are excellent swimmers. They hunt some of the rarest species like cheetal deer, barking deer, wild pig, macaws, and then we have various species. For example, Hereta foams. So Heritaria foams is the species from which timber is obtained. So this is another important species which is seen in Sundarbans. Besides Sundarbans and Gulf of Mannar, we have other species. So Panchmari, which is seen in the regions of Madhya Pradesh, Kanchenjunga in the regions of Sikkim. Then we have Agastyamalai in Kerala, Achanakamar Amarkantak, which is seen in the regions of MP and Chhattisgarh. Now, two major another biosphere reserves that we would discuss are Nilgiri and Nanda Devi. Nilgiri is the oldest, which was found in 1986, and this has around 5,520 square kilometers of area. The regions of Wayanad, Nagarhole, Bandipur, Mudumalai are the areas in Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Kerala, where we have Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve, which is seen. Sambar, cheetal are the common species which are seen here. And then the topography is extremely varied. We have height from 200 meters to up to 2000 meters, and 80% of the flowering species of Western Ghats are found in Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. So endemic species are numerous here. Highly unique species are found in Nilgiri and has a very unique combination. Two endangered species are seen in Nilgiri. What are those? One is the Nilgiri tahar, and the other is the lion-tailed macaw. So lion-tailed macaw is another species which is seen here. Okay, the next is Nanda Devi. Nanda Devi established in 88, and it is part of the Uttarakhand, Chamoli, Pithoragarh and the Almora district. This is the area where reserve forest is mainly a temperate forest, has rich fauna, snow leopard, brown bear, musk deer. Then we have gold eagle, black eagle are some of the common species. Numerous species have got endangered in Nanda Devi because of frequent forest fires and higher amount of poaching activities. So these two have been the important species. So I repeat, Nilgiris, which is part of the Wayanad, Nagarhole, Bandipur, Mudumalai. Then you have the Shiruvan Hills in Tamil Nadu, Kerala and Karnataka. And then the next one is Nanda Devi. Area wise, it is somewhat similar to Nilgiris, a little bigger than that, which is around 5,800 square kilometers. But it is seen in the regions of Uttarakhand. Musk deer, you have snow leopard, snowcock, golden eagle as some of the common species in Chamoli, Pithoragarh and Almora districts of Uttarakhand. So this was about the biosphere reserves. In this lecture, we have understood 5 basic classifications of vegetation: evergreen, deciduous, littoral, thorny forest, and then we have seen the areas of montane forest, the mountainous region. Then we talked about the forest cover in India, the major forest, wildlife, the reasons for declining wildlife, conservation projects like conservation for elephants, rhino, tiger, hangul and so on. And then biosphere reserves in India, some of the major biosphere reserves, the year in which they were established and those which are mentioned in the bold are part of the UNESCO Man and Biosphere program. So some of the biosphere reserves, the 10 of the biosphere reserves out of this are have been included in the list of World Heritage. We would be covering many more NCERT lectures. Stay tuned for many more updates from our side. Wish you a very good luck for preparation. Have a nice day ahead.